Welcome back, everyone. So I got a different game plan. So as you all know, I normally post once a week and that's that. And sometimes the only posting I do is a quick weekly performance report and that's all. So I've been thinking, how can I get more viewership on this channel without becoming a grifter and a sellout and covering what I personally would consider useless, superficial entertainment. So I've had this idea for a while now, which is, and this is how I probably get a reasonable portion of the articles I write, the inspiration behind it, which is I see a Twitter thread and I then try to elaborate my thoughts on it. Now, normally what I've done is I really put a lot of thought into it and try to expand and refine the ideas into a comprehensive, sophisticated attempt at a well-written article. And that's quite time-consuming, unbelievably time-consuming, whether just because that's what it takes or because I'm slow at doing it. The point is that I'm going to try to shoot from the hip, metaphorically, got to offer that disclaimer on these media outlets, metaphorically, and try to just give my stream of conscious with a little bit of thought beforehand to these things. Just to show you in real time, I read something, what I think, I scroll through, and just my thoughts. And we'll see how this works. I'm thinking of calling this Twitter trash talking. And then in a very unhelpful fashion, to the algos, I'll do like Twitter trash talking number 1, number 2, number 3. Otherwise, I'll have to come up with specific titles, which I don't know if I really want to spend the intellectual time to do, even though you would think it shouldn't be that hard. So you let me know what you think in regards to that, what kind of title I should give this. I like Twitter trash talking, or I don't know, there has to be some pun with X. I don't know. Nonetheless, let's get into this. I'm going to try it out. I have this and then another one I'm thinking about doing. And this will just help me be able just to put more videos out, to connect with you all more, to just provide a little bit more material without really taking too much time and sacrificing away from actual more serious publications. And if anything, the verbal processing and stream of consciousness in real time might actually help me work out the ideas. So with that out of the way, let's get into this. Comment: in 2014, when John Morgan and his big weed buddies were pushing... Oh, before I start here, I have no idea how I came across this. Oh, I actually came across this posting because someone I follow just had a little comment and I clicked on it to see what they were it obviously was a comment to something, so I clicked on that. I saw this and then I was like, okay. And normally that's what a lot of people do, but I was like, well, what's going on in the rest of this thread? What's the commentary on that? Or people expounding upon it, criticize, like, well, what's going on? So that's how I landed on this. So following someone on Twitter, they make something that's obviously a comment. I click on that, see what the comment was about, and then see what my initial feelings and reactions were. So with that out of the way, the comment was in regards to this comment. In 2014, when John Morgan and his big weed buddies were pushing medicinal marijuana use, they claimed to be against recreational marijuana. Now they're pushing the most extreme marijuana monopoly in the country, which would permanently change Florida's constitution for the financial benefit of corporations like Trulieve and big weed investors like John Morgan. They'll say anything to make money. We shouldn't fall for it. So let's get in this. This is why you have to question the concept. You have to question the concepts in a statement as much as the statement itself. So in this paragraph, the thing that pops out to me is the most extreme marijuana monopoly. Monopoly. That's an interesting word. Monopoly in the country. The most extreme marijuana monopoly. So it's quantified to marijuana. So that's good, because if they said just the most extreme monopoly, it's like, what about utilities? Those are definitely more monopolistic, or cable companies. And they have to be to some extent, just for scale and profitability it matters. But they qualified it to marijuana, so that's good. And so monopoly. And then the other thing I saw was which would permanently change Florida's constitution for, this is citing the reason, for the financial benefit of corporations. Okay, so they're driving and they're assuming intentions, and that's the only intention they've cited, as though there aren't other intentions as to why. Then they. So now they're pushing. So who's they? John Morgan is part of they, and then Big Weed Buddies are part of they. And then the question is, where does Big Weed Buddies stop? So you could say True Leaf, which is a primary operator in that state. But then, okay, so like the CEO, and then, well, what about the husband of that CEO? And then what about government officials? Because, lobbying efforts, True Leaf's put forth $70 million in lobbying efforts. Okay, so that means lobbying the government. So then that means $70 million or to some extent of it has gone to government officials. So are they also Big Weed Buddies, which means elected officials perhaps are also in this category. So where does the parameters of that category stop? So these are all thoughts I have. So we have monopoly. Okay. Now let's scroll down. We have this comment, which is the comment I want to go to. It says, that's a big lie. There are 25 entities with licenses, and True Leaf only has 22% market share. Where is the monopoly? So you'll see he posted an image, and it doesn't say the percentages, so you have to do the math yourself, but it shows True Leaf dispensing locations, 149 out of 674. I believe that's the 22% he's referencing. And I believe by sales, revenue sales in the state, True Leaf actually makes up 34%. So we have a 22% figure of percentages of dispensaries and 34% figure of revenue. And it's only a medical state. There's no recreation. That's what this vote, this Amendment 3 of the Constitution is all about. Okay, so no, they're not. They're 22% of the market share. Where's the monopoly? Okay, so he provides information, an image from the medical marijuana treatment centers, an official government source, the MMTC of Florida. So there's an appeal to authority there. Okay. Then we have this Ellen Snelling says that True Leaf is 34% of medical marijuana sales. Huge chunk of Florida market. Monopoly. And then a dollar face, a smiley dollar face with its tongue sticking out. Let me zoom in because this is, it's just crucial details that matter. And here we go, right there. Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? Okay, so we got that. So 34% of medical marijuana sales. So she is that a she? I think we'll call her a she. I don't want to mispronoun her. We know how dangerous that is. But I'm just going to go ahead and say she. So she is correcting or further elaborating on this Harry Hood. I'm going to go ahead and call him a him. So he said 22%, but that's because he was citing the lower figure, which is number of dispensaries. And then she went ahead and upped it to, well, the actual sales. So 34%. So to her, she's saying huge chunk of Florida market. So that's a third. One could reasonably argue that a third of something is a huge chunk. If I removed a third of your paycheck, that would be a huge chunk of your paycheck. One could reasonably argue, so that's fine. And then, but then monopoly. It's like, okay, so if something is 34% of sales, then they think that's a monopoly. Like, okay, I disagree with that. If we, let's see if we can do this. Oh boy. Not sure how this is going to work. Who is it? Federal Trade Commission. Here we go. What does the FTC consider to to be a monopoly. Oh, I do not know how to spell. In percentage of sales. Oh, here we go. Let me let's see if I can do this. I can't do this. Okay, so it says, you're not going to see it all. Courts look at the firm's market share, but typically do not find monopoly power if the firm or a group of firms acting in concert has less than 50% of the sales of a particular product or service within a certain geographic area. So less than 50%. Now you could say, but typically do not find monopoly power if the firm or a group of firms acting in concert. I believe that's called tacit collusion, and that's illegal, so that's a whole nother thing. But might be a relevant factor that I'm not going to expound upon, not because it's would hurt what I'm trying to say, but just because I haven't given it any thought, so I don't know what to say on it. But I'm not even sure how you define that, like a group of firms acting in concert. Well, if I'm a company trying to make money selling a product and you are too, then like how does one act in concert? I mean, all kinds of industries act in concert. Utilities, cable companies, pretty much anyone. You lower your price a little bit, I might lower mine. You normally have a leader in a more mature market, so on and so forth. Nonetheless, the takeaway from this is 50%. 50% makes a monopoly according to the Federal Trade Commission. That's a good rough heuristic. So that's worth remembering. This is not. You know, this is the problem with things. I brought you up the wrong thing. Ah, boy, talk about lack of professionalism. So, 34% of medical sales of the market to them is considered a monopoly. So then Harry Hood says 22% of the dispensaries with 34% of sales sounds efficient, but if, I suspect they're talking about economies of scale, but if anyone believes that it's a monopoly, they need to go take a business class. So far, I'm agreeing with him. And then her response is, vote no on 3. Keep Florida safe. Like, that's interesting. That's called switch tracking. She changed the topic. You have a topic and then an issue, which is the topic is don't vote 3 because you're only enriching monopolistic aspirations. As though monopolistic aspirations is enough of a reason to say no on something, as though there aren't other things and variables going on. So that's kind of fallacious in and of itself. And like most companies are aspiring for monopoly status. It's a beautiful thing. Warren Buffett loves to invest in companies like that. So that's a false premise to some extent. But then, okay, don't invest or don't vote yes because you're enriching monopolistic powers and hypocrites and deceivers. Like, okay, sure, spite yourself to punish someone else. Nonetheless, then her response is vote no on 3, keep Florida safe. So number one, she doesn't actually address, like the topic to debate here is what makes a monopoly. What qualifications and quantifications makes a monopoly? So she does not address this. And by the way, if you don't know how to navigate, now knowing what to do and what's going on versus actually behaviorally manifesting how you should act are two different things. I'm terrible at acting correctly, but I'm well aware of spouting what's going on, which is not good for personal relationships, but makes amusing content. So take the good with the bad, I suppose. So she says, classic, you might experience this if you're married or have a girlfriend. You say something, and then they say something that's tangentially associated to the topic at hand, but seemingly subtly shifts the conversation to a different issue. And that's exactly what happened. Keep Florida safe. Okay, so that presupposes that voting yes on number 3 makes Florida unsafe. And yet again, that is switch tracking. I recommend you all look up switch tracking. let's do that. Switch tracking definition. Switch tracking is a pattern that often happens in conversations where one party is giving feedback and the other person responds and changes the conversation. The parties then continue on parallel but different tracks and no real communication happens. It can happen consciously or unconsciously and can occur in many situations, including at work, romantic relationships, when dealing with customer service agents, and when dealing with contracts. Yeah. So it happens all the time. It's well worth investigating that. There's a Hidden Brain episode about that is well worth a listen. So keep Florida safe. And then he responds with, vote no on 3 if you want to make Florida more dangerous. In which she then responds, so now notice we've abstracted the argument to us making merit-based arguments and ideas with one another to appealing to more abstract authority figures, such as this, let me say here, it does not say here, I do not know who made this sign, but it's an official sign, there's authority written on that sign, and then he appeals to, instead of making a cogent and coherent and consolidated argument, he then references a official source, bazinga.com, but that's a whole argument in and of itself that I wish not to get switch tracking on. And so then he cites an article, Less Crime, FBI data shows surprising benefits of cannabis legalization, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I'm sure she didn't read that because, well, how ridiculous that would be. And then she then sends an article, right? This is what people do. I saw this during COVID all the time. Like, pretty much the arguments boil down, you appeal to my authority figure. No, you appeal to my authority figure. I'm sorry, that's too abstract. What happens is, such and such said you should do this. And then someone else will be like, no, such and such said this. And then the why and stuff gets behind it because, after all, you're not a doctor. But, of course, you're not an ornithologist either. But you're more than happy to say that that's a cardinal or a blue jay or a chickadee. But that's another topic in and of itself. So now they're appealing to authority figures and cited articles. So she does this, responds again. And this is what you call, let me see, you have the point of positive return, diminishing return, and negative return. This is definitely diminishing returns, and I would just go ahead and say negative returns. And so people say, you listen to this CNBC, or you listen to this Fox person, or you listen to this governor, or you listen to that governor. And then really all that is, if you wanted to abstract it more, is the whole, you appeal to my authority figure. No, you appeal to my authority figure. And that's what the argument is. Not facts, not information, not details. It's appeal to my authority figure. And that's exactly what they're doing here. And she then says, more weed equals more crime. Violent crime rate in Colorado has increased every year since marijuana was legalized. So then, now look, let me just say this. If I don't know, I'm just going to make up numbers. If they have 1,000 dispensaries, and one of those dispensaries, all else being equal, 1,000 dispensaries get introduced into Colorado, and one of those dispensaries gets robbed, then crime has gone up as a consequence of the legalization of cannabis. That is a true statement. And then you see a lot of this kind of propaganda where people, I can't think of an example, I actually heard something not related to this sector a few days ago. And then once you control, it's like population is increasing. So it's like there will be more car wrecks, all else being equal, which is a very dangerous thing to say, but an oversimplification just for basic understanding. All else being equal within a city, if that city grows because the population is growing, then there will be more car wrecks. Because you could say if 1% of the population has car wrecks, if you go from 100 to 1,000 car wrecks, then you will have 10x the car wrecks. And that's a true statement. And then, I mean, you could say all kinds of, well, I'm not going to because people like to twist words, so I won't say other things that are provocative. My point is, this is called the base rate fallacy. And COVID was a good example. You think, and the answer is you only think this because you're naive and ignorant and ideologically pathologized. Those are the reasons I've come to for why I think these things. Is, COVID was a prime example of base rate fallacies. And I'm not, oh, maybe I will, because why not? I cannot expand this screen anymore while recording, so you'll have to bear with me. Base rate fallacy, COVID. Let's see what pops up. Images. I do not know why I'm announcing all of this like this, so forgive me. There's a way that if I oh boy, let's click on this. Oh, this is not going to work at all. My God, I have made a massive error by narrowing the screen like this. I apologize. We learn as we go, don't we? Sometimes, even though some things can be seen with foresight. I was not planning on doing all of this. Hopefully you can see this. If you can't, then, well, that's too bad, I suppose. So you have the unvaccinated population, the vaccinated population. I'm just trying to show you some pictures to stimulate some thought for you to do your own investigations with. You can type in base rate fallacy, COVID, and then go to images, and then an image like this will come up, and then you can read the stuff yourself. So excellent discussion of the base rate fallacy. If you hear stats saying things like, but half of all hospitalizations are in the vaccinated, you should ask what % of the population is vaccinated, though. Much more at the thread, including examples to work through. So I would recommend maybe even starting here. So that's the problem. Hospitalized, you could have 5 people who are unvaccinated. So if 10% of the population is unvaccinated, and 90% of the population is vaccinated. Now, of course, you have to say, what does it mean to be vaccinated? And, ooh, yeah, that's quite an interesting conversation to have. And it really depends on how much you want to lie and redefine words. But nonetheless, hopefully you understand this. I'm not going to go too much on this tangent, but just know that we should have learned, this is April 27th, 2022, so people should have learned about base rate fallacies about 2.5 years ago, and therefore this shouldn't be a problem anymore, and we should be able to identify it when it's occurring, right? Well, the answer is no. So this is what's happening. So more, or could be happening. It's worth a consideration. You have to ask, okay. Like, you can't say either way. You can't say bull crap, base rate fallacy. She could say more weed equals more crime. Violent crime rates in Colorado have increased every year since marijuana was legalized. I could say that's base rate fallacy. You're an idiot. And then be done with it. And then just as she has done with him. So turnabout's fair play. If you want to criticize someone else's fallacious cope and fallacy and bias, then you can't deploy it yourself, even though people do all the time. And so that's what's potentially happening here in her comment. More weed equals more crime. Violent crime rate in Colorado has increased every year since marijuana was legalized. But maybe that's just because the population has grown every year, presumably, since it's been legalized. So then when they say increased, how are they measuring? You have to question the concepts in a statement as much as the statement itself. When a word is defined based upon when an adjective is, oh, what is it? I forgot my little phrase. When you use loose, ill-defined words that are ambiguous, you obfuscate a lot, so that way you get a lot of wiggle room to finagle things the way you want it. So crime has increased. So does that mean that we went from 1 crime to 2 crimes, or does that mean that 1% of people were committing crimes increased to 1.5? Like, we legalized weed, a bunch of degenerates came in, they committed crimes. That is plausible, and I actually suspect true. The question is, to what extent? And I'll stop there. So his response is, that has nothing to do with cannabis. Okay, so I just said, I try to help my tribe out, and then I put my foot in my mouth. He says that has nothing to do with cannabis. Nothing is a very strong word. I've mentioned many times the issues that arise when you make totalitarian, absolutist statements. Nothing has nothing to do. You could say that has a marginally negligent amount to do with cannabis. Now, that'd be a true statement, but I would say that he has made a false statement. So that's no way to start. So then he says causation and correlation are two different things. You're being sold lies from DeSantis, who legalized more dangerous synthetic THC. How can the natural... Okay, so we're switch tracking again. Or somehow getting... So we started with say no. Well, actually, we started with say no on Amendment 3. That was the poster. And then the tweet was then to do with saying no because you're enriching monopolies and greedy people. And then it became, Then it became, they're not a monopoly. And then it became, yes they are. And then it became, no it's not. And then it became, change it to keeping Florida safe. And then becomes, well, it is going to stay safe. And then it becomes, no, it isn't going to stay safe. And, or goes back to, no, it isn't going to stay safe. And then it becomes, you're propagandized, and if we were being intellectually honest and keeping constant our comparisons and controlling for variables, if this is true that we should not recreationally legalize it, then why does it seemingly be okay to allow the hemp industry to run rampant and less regulated? And perhaps, and he didn't say this, what do we do with the medical marijuana status of Floridian citizens? All like 900,000 of 22 million who use, I think those are correct numbers, 900,000 out of 22 million who have medical cards. Like, what do you do with all of that then? And then he layers on, how can the natural plant, here we go, what is that, argument of nature? How can the natural plant be worse than synthetic? So now it's a natural versus synthetic argument. And then it's broadened out to give me one legitimate reason to vote no. So then she says, Amendment 3, so she's actually answering the question. These are reasons to say no. It would lead to increased addiction, emergency room visits, child poisonings, drugged driving crashes, and psychosis. That's why I'm voting no. Okay, so then he lies again. Or, no, you don't. To say lie is to assign intention, and as I've noted numerous times in my talkings, you just have to assume that most people are barely sentient automatons and non-playable characters, and they seemingly all have a very similar script to their argument style. And so he says, well, that the statistics directly contradict your opinions. So notice that little subtlety there, your opinions. I used to date a woman who would say, that's your opinion. And I finally clued in. I was like, oh, you're assigning the information that I'm disclosing as my opinion, because then you can disqualify it since it's not a fact. And then I'm like, well, that's interesting, don't you think? Like, are you saying that none of my opinions are predicated on facts? And why do you pick and choose my opinions? Because some of my opinions you go for and some of my opinions you don't go for. So it's at your own will and discretion, because, I mean, we're all autonomous humans, so I understand that to some extent. But the argument is, that's my opinion, therefore you disqualify it. It's like, well, isn't our opinion supposed to be predicated on the facts? Isn't our opinion the conclusion from comprehensive analysis? Now, of course, the answer is absolutely not. Like, no, yet again, my naivety has caused, and my poor mental models has caused me more suffering. So he says, well, the statistics directly contradict your opinions. And the answer is, that's not true. So what she did there, that it would increase addiction, emergency room visits, child poisonings, drug driving crashes. That's some of that is true. And yet again, that's the base rate fallacy. So you then have to question the merits of that argument. Like, should we not do any? Because you can say doing anything increases the risk of something negative happening. So then you have to ask, well, is it a net positive? Is it for the greater good? You know, all these other questions. So she is, as far as I'm concerned, accurate enough in saying that it would lead to increased addiction and emergency room visits and child poisonings. I thought a lot of states have actually, this is the one I'm almost most confident on, that many of the states that have legalized it have actually had an increase in reporting of child poisonings from marijuana, which is an interesting statement in and of itself, because what does the word poisoning mean? Yet again, you have to question the concepts in a statement as much as the statement itself, and you have to keep constant your comparisons, control for the variables, and actually define the words. Child, you know, so she says increase of child poisonings. Like, were the children actually poisoned? What does it mean to be poisoned? And I'm not going to go Google that, so you'll have to bear with me on that. So he says, statistically directly contradict your opinions. Crime and ER visits are worse when it's not legal because synthetic is the only option. That was extremely sneaky, wasn't it? So he's saying, it's very interesting. So, ER visits, let's focus on that. She is saying that if recreational marijuana is legalized, then more people will go to the ER from as an indirect consequence of the legalization of recreational marijuana. It's an ultimate versus proximal causation, but it's in there. Okay. And he says no to that because in states that don't legalize recreational marijuana, people are forced to use alternatives such as synthetic proxies, and synthetic proxies cause more people per population. What's the word I'm looking for? Per capita. So synthetic per capita causes more ER visits than normal basic marijuana. Okay, but that doesn't disqualify what she said. Now, because she's saying that more ER visits would happen from the normal THC, and he's saying that crime or ER visits are worse when it's not legal because synthetic is the only option. So what his argument is saying is that it's false because, is that there will be less hospital visits. There will be less hospital visits because less people are using synthetics and more people are using the real things. So the net outcome will be less visits. But that does not disqualify her argument that there will be visits to the ER from the legal medical cannabis. Like, it's not the same argument. So that's fallacious and poorly articulated. And you kind of saw me stumble through it, use too many words, and that's why if I was writing about this, it took me 5 minutes to figure that out. Plus, it's getting close to dinner time. Anyway, if you can't understand this, I can't help you. Well, you can't help people when you're terribly inarticulate and are making numerous false statements. Like, I mean, even if he said things more intelligently and said, well, although it's true that more people would go to the ER due to THC-related incidences, on a net outlook, less people overall would go due to the reduction in ER visits, which is a higher percentage per capita of people when the only accessible thing is synthetic. Now, of course, he didn't say that because, well, people aren't that articulate or well thought out in their opinions. Like I said, you don't really need facts to have opinions. You just need facts to feel good about your opinions. And I'm also not sure of consequence of, well, what about medical? Because how hard is it to get a medical card? And or how hard is it to buy some weed off of your buddy who does have a medical card? So then it's like you got to control for these variables. So he says, if you can't understand this, I can't help you. Vote no for a more dangerous Florida. Just, just twisting that knife in there a little bit. Support synthetic and pharma. So he's saying by her voting no on it, then she is directly or indirectly supporting synthetic and pharma. And, hilarious because that presupposes that synthetic and or pharma is bad, which is like, don't we have the life we live to the extent we do and the quality of existence and less stillborns and all that stuff because of pharma and because of synthetic things? So, yet again, it's just, boy. And then he cites this FL poison control, states that prohibit marijuana use are experiencing significantly higher rates of adverse events related to Delta-8 THC products, according to a new study published in the Journal of Medical Toxicology. So that's an appeal to authority and just citing a source, I suppose. And then I think that's that. And then she didn't reply because, well, she didn't. They were just going to go back and forth anyway at that point. So I think that's really all I wanted to say in regards to this post. Let's see any other comments. Here we go. Amendment 3. Now I really don't know. I'm completely going into unknown waters because I did not read these other comments. How many are there? A few. Let's see what this person says. Amendment 3 would mean higher prices, lower quality, and product shortages. Lower quality and product shortages. Imagine if buying from the dispensary was like buying from a utility company. They can keep their monopolistic moldy boof. I like what? Like, I'm not sure why is it. Amendment 3 would mean higher prices. Why? So, okay, hold up. Supply and demand. Let's think this through. Higher prices. So, if recreation happened, Florida's a big tourist place. They are anticipating 300 to 400% increase in demand if it became recreational. So there would definitely, I suspect, be a short-term imbalance between supply and demand, meaning that there would be higher prices temporarily at least. And then lower quality. Not sure why they said that, but okay. And product shortages. Absolutely. That's the interplay with the thesis of higher prices. So I can see that. In the interim, okay, so let's make long-term constitutional amended decisions based upon short-term expedient gratification. Sounds reasonable to me. Imagine if buying from the dispensary was like buying from a utility company. I'm not quite sure, alluding to utility companies being bad, I suppose. They can keep their monopolistic moldy boof. Okay, so this is just, I guess, maybe just a pissy attitude in general towards companies? Who's monopoly? Like, is all of these, this list of, I believe, 22 or 25 companies, all moldy boof? That seems weird. And I'm not really sure why you're just throwing in monopolistic. Just for the hell of it, I suppose, the connotation of the word. So then here we go. John Morgan is a drunk ambulance chaser. Let's see what the comments are in. Oh, definitely. I've noticed in this cannabis sector that a lot of the probable spam actually is not spam. Let's see if I shot myself in the foot here. Go Eagles. Nope, that was spam. Oh, damn it. Oh, that was funny. Okay, well played. That's funny. Here we go. 2000, it's about legalization. Okay. Lies paid by Big Pharma who don't want Floridians easy access to cannabis plant medicine. Free the plant. free. That's a fun word. The connotation of free. If you say, baby, what's the counter argument? No, don't free the plant. And free the plant. So the phrase free the plant, all in capital letters with an exclamation point, that's pure, I don't know, dog whistling, virtue signaling, connotation, a bunch of subtextual communication going on. That's always great for conversations. Lies paid by Big Pharma. So he's commenting to this section that I'm highlighting, the comment. I mean, I'm not listening to the video. We're not going to. It's a minute, but yeah, we're not going to. They'll say anything to make money. We should fall for it. We shouldn't fall for it. So I don't. So is big weed in bid with Big Pharma? Is that what he's alluding to? I don't know. Okay, here we go. So making it legal so the police can search you, arrest you, take your possessions. No thanks. So yet again, I feel like we forgot that you can get a medical card. Yet again, I don't know the difficulties of that. And you could say, well, you shouldn't have to do that. And fair enough. So keeping it illegal, even though it's medically legal, and so that the police can search you, because has Florida not decriminalized it? I don't know. Because there's difference between making something legal versus decriminalizing it versus increasing how much you do make criminal. All those things, state by state, city by city, I don't know. So that's a aspect of a very comprehensive and complex situation like recreational legalization. So, like, okay. Like, fake news. You must be a hemp user or being paid by the hemp companies. I don't know why they're saying. Oh, okay, I get it, because they're saying legalize it recreationally, and this person essentially is saying you're a propagandist informant meant to mislead and deceive us, and you must be working for the opposition and or perversely incentivized financially. Like, okay, that doesn't, like, that might discredit them somehow, but how does that actually address the merits of the ideas theoretically underpinning the voting yes on Amendment 3? And the answer is it doesn't. Sidetrack situation is an ad hominem attack, but what do you expect? Here we go. Forget about Florida having a big surplus, since a lot of it comes from tourism. You think people from other states are going to bring their families here to go to beaches in Disney World? It stinks of weed everywhere. Yes, I do. And that also presupposes that it will stink of weed everywhere, and that presupposes that it already doesn't stink of weed everywhere, because then the question might be, with 900,000 medical marijuana users of legal, then, well, I don't know, because, like, can you smoke it at the beach legally right now? Is with it under medical use, is it legal to smoke in public? I kind of suspect it's not, but maybe it is. And then, so does Amendment 3 make it now legal to smoke publicly? And does he know the answer to that? Or them? I don't know. This flower or a flag, I'm not really sure what that emoji is. Or avatar. So here he is asking a disingenuous question as a thought-terminating cliche by saying, do you think people from other states are going to bring their families here? That's a rhetorical question. He's trying to allude in a thought-terminating, cliched fashion. So that's always fun. Oh, here we go. Let's 2 comments. Ugh, yes, we will, LOL. Okay, well, there you go. Huh. Oh, probable spam. It must smell like cigarettes everywhere, too. That's actually another argument I was going to make. So, that's funny. Now, I will say, in the state I'm at, they legalized it. I would go on jogs, and I can't say I generally smelt people smoking cigarettes. Weed travels a lot farther and hits a lot harder. I'm just going to say that. So, is this a false equivalency? But I have had the same thoughts, because here we go. What percentage of Floridians smoke cigarettes. Okay, 11.3% of adults in Florida smoked. So 11.3 of 22 million, let's just call that 10%. So 2 million, let's just go with 2 million. So 2 million Floridians smoke cigarettes. And right now, 900,000 people legally smoke cannabis. Who knows the black market? I don't know. I can't tell you right now for Florida specifically. So there's that. And I mean, a lot of it's just black market. It's not as though only medical patients consume cannabis and no one else. So some percentage of the illicit market users are just going to become legal users. And then the question is, what percentage of them are going to do it? So the actual increase in people consuming the product isn't nearly as drastic as one might think. It just appears that way because you see the numbers ramp up hard because it's now recreational, so people then just get their cannabis from a legal outlet, and then that shows up in the numbers, and then that's all misleading because people don't keep constant their comparisons and control for the variables and consider counterfactuals and all of that fun stuff. So, but here we go, we're asking a question in replacement using cigarettes as a placeholder. So, but that I would actually say is a thought-provoking question. So we have that. And final one, how is it a monopoly when there are numerous businesses in the market and DeSantis and the Florida GOP are the ones refusing to issue more licenses? Okay, so that's funny. It's like, well, it's the refusal of issuing licenses that is creating more of a concentration in the industry than otherwise should be. And it is creating such a concentration in the industry that some people are interpreting it to be a monopoly. That's the answer to that question. I'm not really sure if they just couldn't figure that out for themselves or what. Then he goes on to say, the level of dishonesty in your campaign is staggering, even in comparison with other DeSantis stooges. Like, I mean, that might be true. Like, okay, fine. Oh, here we go. What's in here? Oh, I didn't. Oh, boy. Let's see, well, we got a few more. Here we go. As a combat veteran, it is ridiculous to me that I can't legally use my medicine for PTSD, all because 30% of the population is old and supports the prohibition of a damn plant. So-called, back to that appeal to nature. Okay, so I guess they're okay with legalizing cocaine and other, perhaps, peyote and psilocybin and all kinds of stuff, which you might be actually okay with MDM or whatever it is. I can't think of I feel like there's a fourth letter in there. But so that's interesting that, like, it's just weak. This is what I mean when people, I'm actually writing a post and the guy tweeted, that I'm commenting on in my article, that he says something like, you know you must be doing something right when other people have to defer to disinformation. And the problem is people naturally do that. Even when they have facts and they're right on their side, they can't not let cope fallacy and bias pathologize them. People will appeal to practically any argument except one that is a merit-based argument. It's fascinating. Even when everything's on their side, it's fascinating. So there's no need to make this appeal to nature. There's better arguments. But yep, that's what people do because I don't know why. So so-called Party of Freedom trying to tell grown adults they can't smoke at home. Don't tread on me. Well, that's a whole thing, and I'll just end it. I might come back to that. Here we go. There are 25 Florida licenses currently and 22 more pending. The 22 pending submitted their application in April 2023. So much for your big bad weed monopoly. You'll need to come up with a better lie than that. This one, Florida to open medical marijuana license applications will double number of, I don't know. So, yeah. So back to this. So-called Party of Freedom. Yet again, that's a fun word, freedom. No one knows what it means. It's like, so there should be no laws. If society was free, no laws. That would be the don't tread on me. Now the problem is everybody has their own definitions, but they don't know. What they'll do is when you call them out on it, kind of like I'm doing here, they'll stumble awkwardly over a bunch of words, and then you ask them to clarify points, and they really can't, and it's awkward, and they contradict themselves, and then they get frustrated, and then they get emotional, and then they don't like you because by you asking questions, you mustn't be on their side, because anybody who understood wouldn't need to ask questions because it would be so obvious. And I've cautioned you all before about things when someone says it's obvious. So so-called Party of Freedom. Okay, fine, I guess. Assuming this person is a Republican who just isn't okay with some of the outdated viewpoints, as a Republican or libertarian, like they just be okay with anything and everything, like all the perverted, twisted things that people do. I'm not even going to mention the words that I'm alluding to. So hopefully you can read between the lines. All freedom, like so much so-called Party of Freedom. Well, if a person legitimately thinks that legalizing a drug that is Schedule 1, even though you could say that's predicated on xenophobia and propaganda and myths, but some people have been propagandized. Maybe they actually believe it. Let's just assume good faith, and they're ideologically pathologized. And they really think that introducing and legalizing cannabis, and I could understand the viewpoint actually, as people should, to better able to argue against it, but see some real concerns about it. Like, well, it's a drug, and gateway drugs, and kids, and if it's around more, then that should mean that it's more accessible, which means kids could get it easier. And like all these beliefs, and they're just uneducated and ill-informed, and they have no intentions of not being, and so they have worries, and those manifest into emotions and heuristics, and then they just do whatever their tribe does, because that's a basic heuristic that works out well enough. And so it could be a compromise on freedom. Like you could say there's a certain level of freedom in the state currently, and by introducing something, and by introducing a substance to the population, that could further compromise and degrade the morality and ethics of that society and culture, and therefore you'll actually have less freedom, even though you allowed more things to go on, because other things you're allowing more of is crime, let's say. So that's interesting. And then trying to tell grown adults they can't smoke at home. That's funny, because, okay, he's going to smoke at home, but a lot of people aren't going to smoke at home, so he might be the minority, so you can't cater. I mean, you can, it depends on the situation and the context, but trying to tell grown adults they can't smoke at home, it's like, it is interesting, and I do empathize with that, and it does resonate with me. And these don't tread on me. It's like okay, I guess when there's a fire ordinance because it's really windy and it hasn't rained for weeks, and the government tells you not to burn your trash in rural areas because of wildfires, then that's them treading on you, and them putting regulations on milk because people were putting poison into milks to make it more white and pure looking. Like, is that treading on you? And well, the answer is yeah, to some extent it is, and that's a difficult conversation because it's very complex and all kinds of interplays and dynamics, and what you're really trying to do is get rid of the 1% or 2%, the minority of people that are bad actors to protect the larger majority, and it's very complicated. I mean, my God, there's entire libraries worth of information on these concepts, so I'll stop there, but very silly stuff. A lot of this is just silly, and people feel confident to say it publicly, which means they don't recognize it's silly, or they have no shame. Either way, not the best. So there's that. So this is, oh, what did I say I was going to call this? Twitter trash talking. Is that what I said it was? This is episode 1 of Twitter trash talking. Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts, comments, I imagine this has gone on much longer than I thought it was going to, but I do have that that ability to talk a lot, as that one commenter in a few of my videos is noted by me liking the sound of my own voice. But this is just a stream of thought, and interestingly enough, I would say I probably only spent 5 minutes looking and reading and thinking about this little thread, but then when it comes time to say words, it always takes a lot longer, which is one reason why I try to write things down to consolidate it, and even then that takes long, and that's just because there's a lot of things going on. So with that, let me know what you think about this in the comment section. I'm still going to do a second one, regardless of what you say in the comment section, but if it doesn't get much fanfare, so be it. Thank you for watching, and until next time.